Okay, welcome everybody. Apologies for the delay in getting started. I hope that you can all hear me successfully. I am Martin Bullen. I'm the president of the BMW CCA M chapter, and I'm very proud to introduce the most recent in the latest in our series of virtual meetings. This comes pretty hot on the heels of the previous chapter meeting, which was not actually virtual, but we finally were able to have an event in person, which was the MX1 festival held down at in Greenville, South Carolina. So this is the first of the meetings since then. We're hoping to be able to, going forward, have a blend of these meetings where we have both virtual and in-person meetings. And we're also very interested if any of you would be interested in working to host or assemble a meeting in your local area for fellow M enthusiasts. That would be a terrific terrific thing to be able to do, and would very much appreciate. You can drop me a message in the Q&A or in the chat, or afterwards. If you go to our website, all our emails are there, and we'll do our best to bring you on board. So it's my pleasure tonight to introduce Tom Plucinsky. Tom is the Department Manager, BMW Group Product Communications, BMW of North America. Quite a mouthful. Most of you probably know him from his column in the Rondell, which is there every month. He writes from the insider's perspective at BMW North America, and gives us a very interesting insight as BMW CCA members into the workings of what's going on at the mothership, as it were, and in the brand that we all hold so dear. So Tom has a long history with BMW. He was instrumental, I believe, in the importation of those 25 1994 BMW E36 M3s that made it to Canada, and he has some very interesting stories to tell us. So with no further ado, I'd like to turn it over to Tom. And Tom, please take it away. I know you have some interesting things to talk about tonight on the subject of M and BMW, and I'll do my best to field questions for you as they pop up in the chat or in the Q&A, and then some people were kind enough to send questions in advance, so hopefully you get a chance to address those as well.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Okay, because I was muted there for a while. By the way, it was 45 of the European version cars for Canada.
45. Okay, that still makes it the rarest of the E36s.
It's pretty rare, exactly. Yeah. So I'm happy to be here. Actually, I'm really happy to see the M chapter growing. It's something that we've wanted to do for quite some time, and BMW M back in Munich has wanted to have a club over here that is dedicated to them. So so we're really happy and proud that this is off the ground and growing, and that you're doing seminars like this. You know, we in the US are the biggest market for BMW M, and we account for roughly 35% overall of M sales around the world. So, you know, that's significant. And in some cases, some models were quite a bit higher than that. So thanks to all your members for being good customers of M, and hopefully we make a lot more M cars that you guys like.
That's something we're all looking forward to. I personally, well, I'm a long-term E36 M3 owner, a huge fan of the E46. I also owned an E92 M3 for a while, and if I could twist my wife's arm to let me get my hands on an M2 competition, I'd be a happy man. But
yeah, M2 competition. Now we have the M2 CS, which is also amazing. Yeah. And I just spent some time in the new M4 at Mid-Ohio sports car course, driving one of the competition models, so the automatic version, and it's really a lot of fun. So everyone gets better. I've said this in a column that when I first drove an E30, I thought that was the best car ever. And then the E36 came and I thought, oh, this is the one. And then I got a first drive in E46 and I went, oh, this is the one. And I kept going through the range. And, you know, the current one is, again, the best yet. Every car has its own flavor and its own endearing features. And, you know, I'm an owner of an E92 M3, but every one of them just keeps getting better and better and better. So we've got to give something for you to aspire to, right?
Yeah, I really enjoyed watching the videos on YouTube from Henry Catchpole in the UK and Chris Harris in the UK,
yep.
Introducing the new M4, and they both eulogized the car, which was
right.
Obviously the grille has been very controversial.
Sure, but beauty's in the eyes of the beholder. So, and honestly, it doesn't look as good in photos as it does in real life. So, you know, it's up to you. And besides, when you're in the driver's seat, you don't see any of that anyway.
Exactly, and that was a huge part of the message from both Catchpole and Harris, is that it doesn't matter what it looks like. The car is just fabulous to drive. And if anybody's looking for some late night YouTube viewing, I would highly commend both of those videos.
Yeah, definitely.
Tommy, one of the things you indicated that you'd like to talk with us about, and I think it's very appropriate because next year is the 50th anniversary of BMW Motorsport / BMW M.
Right.
And the M3 is really the car that it didn't technically start at all in the US for BMW, but it's really the car on which BMW has hung its shingle on the M brand in North America.
Mm-hmm.
After 6 generations, can you give us some perspective on that progression and BMW's thought process in each of those, or the evolution of the cars as they've
Sure.
come out?
Yeah, I mean, when E30 M3 was launched, M was not really known in the US. The M1 was never imported over here, and it was low volume anyway. The CSL was not officially imported into the US. So M was really not very well known except for the E28 M5, which was a very limited production, and the M6, right? The E24 M6. So here was a new car, and the car was somewhat difficult to live with on a day-to-day basis. It's a wonderful car, but it's a very buzzy engine, smaller engine. And I remember I had one as a company car. It was a car actually that spent a year on the wholesale lot with BMW Canada. So it gives you an idea of how the sales slowed down on those cars very quickly. They were expensive. They were very cool looking. The handling was amazing, but it was a difficult car to live with on a day-to-day basis because you really had to rev that engine. It was buzzy. And, you know, on day to day, you probably would want to drive a 325 IS more than an M3. But that car had a very specific purpose, and it was a homologation special to go racing. And we got a little over 5,000 in the US. 5,000 had to be built for the world. We ended up building around 15,000 overall. And that car became a very successful race car. In fact, the most successful race car in the history of touring cars. So it was an exceedingly important car for the history of BMW and for the history of M, both worldwide and in the US. And then E36, I think, is the one that really put M on the map in the US. And we didn't get the world car that time. And in Canada, we brought in the European version, but in the US, it was a car built to a price, and it had most of the good stuff that the European car had without the extra cost, and it was available as a coupe and a sedan and a convertible, as you know, and it really sold incredibly well and put BMW and M on the map as a performance brand. And that was the foundation for then how the E46 did well. And the E46, until the F8X came out, was the best-selling M car ever. So so the E36 built the foundation for the success of E46, which then was the world car, right? It was the same around the world.
Mm-hmm.
E92 probably could have built on that some more, but it was launched right in the middle of the worst recession, worldwide recession in our living history here. So that car struggled a little bit in the beginning of its life cycle, but then it did very well at the end of its life cycle. So that car was so E46 sold about 46,000 units in the US. E92 was about 28,000. So it dropped quite a ways down. And then the F8X, so F80, F82, F83, that one actually surpassed the 46 by just a little bit. So now we started on the trend upwards again. And we expect that this one, this version with all-wheel drive, possible two-wheel drive, manual, automatic in sedan, coupe, and convertible will take us even further. So yeah, it's been a long journey, and it started quite small, but it's now become a very important part of what M is, what BMW North America is, and what the club is, I think.
It really is. I mean, if you go to a club event, typically the car that's there, especially for track junkies like myself, it's M3s of one version or another.
Absolutely, yeah. Definitely. Speaking of 50 years, though, there was a question you forwarded to me earlier, and it asked about the influence of Bob Lutz in the beginnings of motorsport.
Yeah,
that's actually quite true. He was incredibly influential in the beginning of this, and you can all thank Bob Lutz for M and for BMW Motorsport. He was the vice president of sales and marketing for a very short time early in his career. He was only at BMW for about 2.5 years or so, but he made a lot of changes during those years. And one of them was he came to realization that we didn't have the marketing budget of some other companies. So we had to be clever the way we used our marketing money. And he looked at how Porsche was winning on racetracks, and that turned into sales of cars on Monday. So race on Sunday, sell on Monday sort of thing. And he thought that could work for BMW as well if we got serious about racing. And prior to his time, we had privateer teams doing it. So Schnitzer and Alpina, which are both incredible teams, but it wasn't a factory effort. So he hired Jochen Nerpasch, who was at Ford at the time, and Lutz knew how good he was at doing this sort of thing, and brought Jochen Nerpasch in, and Baumgarten was Nerpasch's right-hand man, and they put the CSL together, or redid the CSL in a lighter weight and got it to win. They brought it to America in 1975, right after BMW North America had been incorporated, and won the 12 Hours of Sebring on their second race over here. So, that was the beginning of motorsport with Nerpasch and Lutz, and it was the beginning of BMW as the ultimate driving machine in the US with the CSL in 1975.
So deposing the Ford Capris, which I think were the dominant cars in...
which were cars that Nerpasch did also. So
right. But that was quite the move and the foundation for so much of the what has become the legacy of the brand and the enthusiast foundation for BMW in general, and M in particular.
Yeah, exactly. So we can all thank Lutz for that. And I think a long time ago, I wrote a column thanking Maximum Bob for what he did for BMW, because it was the starting motorsport. It was redesigning the 3 Series prior to it coming out. He had seen the replacement for the 2002 and went, oh no, this is not going to work. So he delayed the launch of the 3 Series, got some help from Opel to bring in clay and clay modelers to do clay models of the upcoming cars. Well, prior to that, BMW did it with wood. So and it was done through engineering, not through a design department. So he really started the design department at BMW, if you like. our first three clay models were the 3 Series, the 7 Series, and the 6 Series. The square taillight 2002 was a refresh of the 2002 so that they could keep it in production for a while until the 3 Series was ready. So that's all Lutz. And there's something else. 2002 turbo, Lutz again, and the turbo concept for the 1972 Olympics. That was a sports car, a kind of a sustainable sports car with crash protection and so on back in those early days. That was his idea as well. He got in trouble for that, but that was him.
That's the car that has the front end that looks somewhat like an M1, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. It does have some M1 in it. It was kind of a burnt orange color, and the front and back were orange. Yeah, it did a world tour. And actually, I remember seeing the car at the Montreal Auto Show in 1974, and that was my first imprint of BMW, if you like.
Okay.
That car, yeah.
Mine came just a year or two later when a friend of my father's took me for a ride in his brand new 320i in the UK, and scorched around some back roads at speeds that I thought as an impressionable teenager were next to impossible.
Right.
So, and then after that, the 323i, which never was sold officially in the US, that was my poster car for a long time after that. It was
a great car too.
Yeah. So one of the questions we've had, and it builds on what you were talking about earlier with the G8X series, is as far as we have Henry Gelb, who's asking about the input that BMW takes from owners on M cars, and while the current models have recently launched, there will be presumably a life cycle impulse at some point in the near future on these.
It usually is, yeah.
Does BMW take into account the feedback from owners at that point in the LCI process, or with new models? How does that work from an insider perspective?
There's a number of ways in which that works. There's BMW historically has had a pretty good idea what direction they wanted to go. So especially the M guys really have a strong idea of what their brand is and what direction they want to go. And we try to pull the customers along with us. And then, and that you could take that as one extreme. The other extreme is the way Lexus has said that we build the car that our customers want. The thing that's difficult is not building the car that your customers wanted 5 years ago when you start the development, but the car that they're going to want 5 years into the future. So there's a mix that has to take place there. And some of that is we have a fairly sizable department at BMW North America that are product strategy people. And they are dyed-in-the-wool car guys and girls that talk to customers and try to get a feel for where the market seems to be going. They look at the competitors, they look at trends in the market, and give that feedback back to Germany. And on the other hand, you have Germany who says, we can build something like this. These are where we think we can go with the car within a certain price range, right? Because we're always building to a price, of course. And then we kind of bring that together. Probably a good example would be the manual transmission in the current M3. So in the G8X M3, that is, had it not been probably for the U.S. market, it probably wouldn't exist. And it's really the U.S. customer who wants more involvement with the car. Ultimate lap time is not as critical to a U.S. customer than feeling connected and feeling the visceral interaction with the car. And that's where we feed that back into Munich and try to figure out a way where it can be done. So it's ongoing. I know it's a long answer to your question, but it's an ongoing process. It goes from product strategy people would be talking about projects 5 years down the road already, but they're also talking about LCI and even next year's offering.
Are you able to offer us any tidbits of what might be in the offing in the near future?
Nope.
Nope. I have to ask.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So there's that group, and then there's a steering committee, and the steering committee is a broader group. There's people from finance in there. There's some senior execs. There are people from financial services and from PR, so from my area as well. We're all in these meetings, and we try to come up with either arguments why we need to go in a certain direction or arguments why Munich shouldn't go in a certain direction. But it's an ongoing process, and it works quite well, actually. I think we've gotten some really good products to the market that are really well suited to the US customer.
With the E36 M3 being the poster child for that, in essence.
Yes, things were a lot easier back in those days, I will say. Okay. I mean, the company was a lot smaller, and our volume was a lot lower. We had fewer plants and so on, so it was easier to do that sort of thing back in those early days, I guess, than it is today. I mean, today we produce over 2 million cars a year. Over 60% of them are SAVs. So, the M market is strong in the US, but in some other markets, it's very small. So, it's a much more complex business now.
But that dovetails really nicely into a question Brian S. has asked in the Q&A regarding the X4M competition.
Mm-hmm.
There's been a lot of proliferation. The M cars used to be M3s, M5s, M6s, and that was about it.
Right.
But now there's an M version of just about every platform, as well as the M Sport models and so forth as well. But with that proliferation, has that diluted the M essence? Is a G8X as much? How does that compare from a performance perspective to somebody who's thinking about getting an X4M?
There's a couple of ways to look at this. One, we have the X4Ms and the M performance cars, so the M550, for example, right, M550i, and then there are the M Sport packages on the cars. BMW M GmbH is its own company, and it's a subsidiary of BMW AG. So they are in the business of making money for M GmbH. Now, any money they make, they can invest in more R&D and more models, or better models, or certain technologies that they'd like to put in their models. So I would say that, rather than the proliferation being bad for M, it allows M the deeper pockets that it needs to be able to develop a better core product for you. So I think the G8X is a better vehicle because they make money on sport packages for everything from a 1 Series to a 7 Series. Mm-hmm. And again, every car within the range has to pull its own weight. We don't have cars that we just put in the market as loss leaders, or we don't just put them in the market and say, there you go. Every car has to pull its weight in terms of giving a contribution back to the company. So when a new model is introduced, there is a lot of research and a lot of background in research in that car to make sure that it's going to be successful. And I can tell you that X3M, X4M have been very successful, and so is X5 and X6M. And I think the M brand is stronger for it.
It's the hair shirt purists who want their stripped down M something. All 5 of them are not going to make a sufficient business case for.
Well, that's why we make the M2 CS, right? And so if you're a full-on track nut, now you can buy an M2 CS Racing and go race it. So it's up to you.
Yeah. Now and talking about the M2 CS racing, apparently one of the questions that we had, which I forwarded to you, is that BMW has made some of those parts available for sale through dealers, but can you talk about any of the restrictions that are in place on those?
Yeah, actually, this is pretty important. So the customer race car division of M, so that would be M2 CS Racing, the M4 GT4, and soon the M4 GT3. Those are the three levels of customer race cars that we are about to sell. The M4 GT3 is not out there yet. Those cars are supported by parts through our part system. So you can only get those parts from a motorsport dealer, and not every dealer is a motorsport dealer. And those are parts designed for a race car. They're not designed for the street. And an M2 CS Racing can never be registered for the street. It is brought in as a race car. It has an EPA exemption for that specific purpose and can never be registered for the street. So there really is a separation between street and race. Yeah, so I would say, there may be a few exceptions, but I would say that the race parts are not available for street cars, period.
And the parts are probably not homologated for street use?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Yeah.
If they don't go through that type of approval process or whatever, then that's a reason why they can't be sold, even if it doesn't look like it makes sense.
Right. Yes. For example, exactly. So you want to put a race seat from the race car and the street car. That race seat has been homologated for FIA racing, or in the US SRO or IMSA, but those regulations are very different than what DOT wants and what NHTSA wants. And you can get hurt on the street in one of those. They don't have airbags in the seats, and it's never been tested how those seats react with the airbags that are already in the car. So really, we're absolutely no. Race, street, period.
Yeah. Talking about the new models, that leads to the question, and something that you indicated that you have some interesting insights to share with us, and that's the first electrified M model, the i4 M50.
Right. Yes. Hopefully everyone's seen the first photos of the car and of the i4 in general. The i4 M50 is really the first M badged electric car, and it will come to market in the first quarter of next year. It's a two-motor car with a little over 500 horsepower. It should be pretty darn quick, and the pricing is a little bit below what an M3 is. So I wouldn't say it's a track car at all, but it certainly will have ample performance in a full electric car. So we're looking forward to that one.
What does the future look like for electrification in general in M? We've seen some technologies come and go, DCT being an example of that, where the DCT gearboxes have been replaced by the ZF8 speed almost ubiquitously.
Yes. And that started in the race car. That started in the M235 racing.
Yes.
Where and actually that was a case where ZF said, this transmission will work in that race car. And we were like, well, okay, let's see. And we tested it out, and we have 170 of those on the tracks around the world being campaigned every weekend. And sure enough, that transmission has been really, really strong. So that gave us the confidence to make it the transmission for the M5. It's a different version of it, but it is essentially the same one. And now for the M3, the plus side on DCT and SMG before that was speed of shift. Well, the ZF is able to do that now. The downside of those early manumatics, if you want, was that if you didn't shift them manually, they weren't that livable, and you would end up with a lot of clutch wear, especially on the SMG ones, if you drove it like you had an automatic. And I know none of us on this call do that, but some of our customers do drive them that way, and it is an issue. So with the automatic transmission, you've got the sharp, strong shifts when you want it, and in D or S3 mode. or you can put it in D1 mode and it operates just like a normal automatic. So it really is the best of both worlds now these days. But no one would have guessed 10 years ago that the ZF 8-speed would have done that.
Right. So it was basically a question of just a better technology coming along and replacing.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And you don't know until probably about 3 years ahead of time. At least we don't know until about 3 years ahead of time what technology is going to be game changing. And really that ZF transmission is game changing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what can we expect in terms of the application of electrification to the M range going forwards?
Well, I think we'll have to stay tuned. I can't tell you much, but I can tell you that the i4 M50 is a full battery electric model. It has a performance of an M performance vehicle, so it's not a full M3 or M4 if you like, but it's in between. It's like an M550i would be, for example. Mm-hmm. And it's all-wheel drive. It handles really well. I mean, we've had media in the car in prototypes of it, and they've been really impressed with it. I think if you've seen some of the reports have been super strong. And it was the M50 that they drove. Full road test of the final production cars will be later this fall, so we'll see what people think there. But I think there's room at M for full BEV vehicle, and BEV gives you certain aspects that an ICE car can't. So we have a couple of prototypes that we've shown some media. We have two cars actually. One's an M2 and the other one's a 5 Series. The 5 Series was the first one, and its nickname is Lucy, short for Lucifer, if you can believe it. And that car has 3 electric drive units in it. So we have our drive units in a modular setup. So it's a electric motor that we built ourselves, which is unlike a lot of manufacturers. These are our proprietary motors. Motors are middle names, so we have to build the motor, right? And transmission and engine control electronics all in the same case. And we call that a heat unit. And in this Lucy car, there were 3 of those, 2 on the rear axle, 1 on the front. So it's an all-wheel drive. The front heat unit drives both wheels. The rear heat units, one drives one side and one drives the other. And what you can do then with something like that is you can torque vector. So you can give additional torque to one side over the other side and start to rotate the car. And the handling characteristics of this car were exceptional. So not only does it have massive acceleration, but it has instantaneous torque vectoring that is unlike anything you could ever reproduce with an internal combustion car. So that was starting to open up people's eyes of what's possible down the road with a BEV. And so that was the first one. The second car was an M2. There's been a couple of spy photos of it testing. It's not planned for production or anything. It's just a test vehicle, but it's I think it's 1,000 Newton meters of torque.
Wow. So
again, 3-motor car, and with that you can adjust. I mean, you can adjust slip angle on the car to within a degree just by programming it in. So you can have that thing hung out perfectly smoothly. And the other thing with BEV setup is that we've got a new traction control system that is it's 100 times faster than the traction control system on our modern ICE cars. So you don't have the wheels turn and then get pulled back. You just have the wheel right on the edge of traction at all times. So you're able to do much more in terms of dynamics of the car. So I think there's a ton of fun new things that we're going to learn over the next decade or 15 years or so as engineers around the world, and us included, learn what characteristics you can use to make handling even better and more fun with a BEV.
We're all going to miss the sound of the motor, but
well, yeah.
But it sounds like the core of performance and handling is going to remain regardless of the power source.
Yeah, I'm pretty optimistic it will. Yeah, exactly. The sound will change. It will be, yeah, it will be different. But in terms of thrill, I think it's still going to be there.
You got the guys in Munich who'll be able to program it to sound whatever we want it to sound like in the cockpit.
Oh, they can do that already. So.
The big question, though, is with the battery electric vehicle and the ability to program it to hang out, that the world drifting record that was set down at the Performance Center, how are they going to refuel in the middle of a drift with a PEV?
Yeah, that's going to be a difficult one. I'm not sure how to tackle that one. that record just might stay. I don't know. Yeah, with an electric car charging as you're going around drifting, that might be that's we didn't think they could refuel while they were drifting to start with, so maybe they'll figure it out. We'll see.
There we go. Something that's topical, a question just popped up from Michael Friede is, can you tell us more about BMW's plan to return to IMSA in 2023? I've seen the ads with it's the art car from the Le Mans program, the 1999 winner, that hinting at promising things to come.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, we did make an announcement that we're going to enter the LMDH class in IMSA in 2023. We haven't really said much more than that at this point. LMDH, though, I can explain, is a hybrid electric prototype style car. So this means that we will be in the class that is able to fight for overall victory at places like the 24 Hours of Daytona and 12 Hours of Sebring. So it puts us in the league that we were in with the V12 LMR in a plug-in hybrid sort of technology, right? So we have a number of plug-in hybrids in our range, power hybrids in some cases, so big ICE engines, and then supplemented by electric power. And that's what this race car will have. So the hybrid unit itself is proprietary, so everyone in the series has it. How it's programmed can be adjusted to the individual manufacturer. We choose the engine that goes with it, and the chassis is bought from one of the 3 manufacturers that will produce the chassis. Bodywork is ours, of course. So it will look like a BMW. We're allowed to do certain aerodynamics with changes to it. The motors, the engine is ours. The motor, the electric motor, is set by the class. It should be really exciting. I'm looking forward to it. Let's see. More to come on that, I'm sure.
I know that. And I'm sure I speak for a lot of enthusiasts. It'll be fun to be able to cheer on BMW on the racing track again.
Well, we're still there. I mean, we're there in IMSA right now with the M8s. Yeah. They'll retire at the end of this season, and we're there with Turner Motorsport in the M6 GT3. Bill Oberlin still racking in wins and becoming the even more winningest driver in IMSA history. So we're still there, but a reduced amount this year.
True. Between Will Turner and James Clay at
exactly.
They're flying the flag quite nicely at the moment.
Absolutely. Yep. Yeah. Well, and we had in IMSA, the Michelin Endurance Challenge class, we have somewhere between 6 and 10 M4 GT4s running. So, we're definitely flying the flag there, and SRO series is also really strong with BMW products. So, we're still in it.
Fair enough. Now, with the launching of the hybrid racing program, is that the final nail in the coffin for hydrogen and the research into alternative fuels at BMW?
Absolutely not. Actually, no. This week we announced we're starting testing of a new hydrogen fuel cell vehicle. It's an X5, and we think there is future for hydrogen. So, a BEV, a battery electric vehicle, you typically want to size the battery to be able to do about 300 miles range. That seems to be about the sweet spot. Any more than that, you're carrying way too much weight around. and more cost, of course, because batteries are a very expensive portion of the car. So, you know, there's a balance between what range do you want and how much you're willing to pay and how much of a loss do you want to take because you're carrying all this extra weight. When you come to someone who needs a long distance vehicle, that's where hydrogen comes into play better. So essentially the motor units and all the electronics that make a BEV work, you use that, you just move that straight over to the hydrogen fuel cell vehicle. And rather than having a large battery that holds your energy, you carry hydrogen. The hydrogen goes through a fuel cell, creates electricity, charges a small battery, and runs the vehicle. So with the hydrogen vehicle, you would use that more for longer distance.
It would definitely be the rather than combustion of hydrogen in the traditional ICE, it's going to be a
right. When we first did our hydrogen test, it was a dual fuel vehicle, right? So it was a V12 that could either run on hydrogen or gasoline at the flip of a switch, and that was something we thought was important during an interim period when you went from gasoline to hydrogen in the infrastructure. It's turned out that that's not what's happened. The electric car seems to be gaining popularity and becoming the dominant force. But again, you're limited to a certain distance. So probably the first vehicles we would see go to hydrogen power would be transport trucks and things. And then it would move to longer distance vehicles. So that we're building a test fleet of X5s with the fuel cell technology. A fuel cell technology that we share with Toyota. It's one of the pieces of shared technology. When we built them, or we designed the Supra for them, they worked with us on hydrogen fuel cell technology and some other tech. So this is part of that whole thing, and we think there's a future for it down the road. It's not imminent, but it's possible.
Because I think Toyota has been selling, I forget, is it called the Mirage
right.
on the West Coast?
Yeah,
the hydrogen fuel cell vehicle.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, out east I don't get to see any of those, which is just as well because they're freaking ugly. But it's interesting technology.
You certainly notice it when you see it. That's for sure. Yeah.
Changing the topic, we have this is an interesting question that popped up from Bruce. He says he has a 1995 M3. Actually, no, he doesn't say it's an M3. He just says it's a 95 BMW with the window sticker. Instead of having an MSRP list, it says property of BMW of USA Promotions.
Huh.
Car was built in either January or February of 95, depending on the records, and was not sold by BMW until June of 96. How would he go about finding out more about the history of the car? And just in general for BMW owners who are curious about the history of their cars and want to give them a birthday cake or celebrate, how does that work?
Well, there's a couple of things you can do. BMW Group Classic offers a certificate of, what do they call it? A certificate on the car. So there is a cost for it. You give them the VIN, pay the money, and they will research the vehicle and send you a certificate of authenticity. So that's one possibility. You said 2005?
1995.
1995. Okay. Yeah, that's kind of in between. That's one where maybe if he sends an email to my Rondell email address, I can see if I can find out anything. It's kind of in between our systems, and the warranty system would be out of the warranty system by then. It's probably out of the sales system, long out of the sales system. So I'll see if I can find anything, but it might be difficult. But he should, when he sends the email, he should send a picture of the page that he's got. I'd be very curious to see that. Maybe I can find someone who would know.
What's the cutoff for finding out and who should the owner contact for the older cars to to get this?
The older car should be to BMW Group Classic in Munich.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And their URL is bmwgroupclassic.com, I believe.
Okay, or possibly .de or something like that.
Might be no, I think it is .com actually.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Do you know what the model year cutoff is for that service?
No, I don't. It's probably roughly 10 years or so.
Okay. Okay.
10 years and older.
Yeah. Interesting. I might see if they can help me with my Z3.
They might be able to. Yeah. They make parts for Z3 now. BMW Group Classic now makes replacement parts for Z3. So they go back to the old suppliers and have new parts made up.
Interesting. I'm the original owner. It's a '97, and
oh, very nice.
I'd always wanted a classic car, and then I bought the Z3 and decided instead that I would just hang on to the car until it became a classic, and I'd enjoy the whole experience from soup to nuts.
And that's a Spartanburg car too.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
So so let me put in a quick plug for Z3 owners. The facelifted car. Actually it wasn't the facelift. It was the I guess I could be crude and call it the ass tuck, because it was they gave it they restyled the rear end for the LCI on the Z3.
Right.
There are little reflectors on the bumpers at the back, and those are unobtainium in the Z3 world. I don't care personally because my car doesn't have them, but I know for speaking for Z3 owners that's a part that keeps popping up as being something that
there are a few of those. Yeah, and that's not the only one. There are some other parts, and if it's a part used on the world car, then there's a better chance of getting it, or a better chance of BMW Group Classic reproducing it.
Okay.
But if it's a US only item, then it gets to be a little bit more difficult. But there's always, the Group Classic is looking for opportunities to make parts and sell them. So, because that's how they make their money, which allows them to do what they do. That's something we can feed back to them as well, saying, hey, there's a demand for this.
Okay.
Another one that's a big issue has been the taillights on the Z8, the neon taillights on the Z8. Mm-hmm. They do tend to stop working after 10 to 15 years. And there were no replacements for a while. So I know they've been working very hard with the supplier to try to reproduce them as they were. So
did Satch complain to you? Is that what happened?
No, it wasn't Satch. His are fine. Yeah, his are still, well, I think he sold the car now, but his are okay. But we've had a few cars in the US where they failed, and there was a period of time where you just couldn't get replacements. So the aftermarket came in with LED replacements, but if you really want to keep it right, it should be the neons, and
right.
And BMW Group Classic has been working on that. I think they've got it now. So
there's just a comment here from Keith Kay to pointing out the BMW Group Classic has an awesome YouTube channel, and I've seen
they do. Yes,
they pulled out a couple of hidden gems. I watched the M8 video that they put together, which was a teaser, and it left me really wanting a lot more.
Yeah, that's a really interesting car, that one. A lot of it is composite. The windows are plexi. Under the hood, the engine is a really odd one. It's not the V12 out of the F1 McLaren F1. It's another version, and it's not even the one that's in the V12 LMR. It's kind of in between, and it's really beautifully done. It's well put together. It doesn't look like a test mule at all, and it's a spectacular car. But yeah, we don't bring it out very often. We had it in Monterey, I think about 5 years ago, so a few members got to see it, but it's been hidden away for many years. Yeah, it was lost actually for a long time, and it was sitting in the basement of M for many years, and everyone forgot it was there, and then it was found again.
Do they ever run it?
Yeah, they do run it. Yeah, I've seen it run once, and it sounds spectacular, and it looks like a lot of fun to drive. But yeah, maybe one day.
So talking about, since you mentioned the McLaren F1 with the S70, just a quick plug, and I have to mention Henry Catchpole again, who just did a YouTube series on his channel with a comparison test of the F1 against the Porsche GT1 and the Mercedes CLK in the same time period, and that was it was a 4-part series. But the music of the M motor in the F1 is just intoxicating.
Yeah, that motor is fantastic. It really is.
Yeah.
When you hear it with straight pipes on it, it's even better. It's a really fantastic engine. One of the best sounding naturally aspirated engines ever, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That and the Matra V12 from F1 and the
yeah, I didn't like those too much, but I found them a little shrill. But the V12, yeah, in the McLaren F1 is really fantastic. And if you're in the car, it's right behind you. You know, so
it's there, isn't it?
Yeah, your air intakes are just over the driver's head, so you know it's there. Yeah, and the torque out of that engine is astronomical.
It still stands as a crowning achievement of BMW M in many ways. And obviously the technology has continued to progress, but in the time period.
Yeah, and that was a pretty important motor in our history for sure, and it became the basis for the P76 and P75 that were in the V12 LMRs, which were dominant in both IMSA and Europe. Le Mans, actually, we won Le Mans with it. Amazing engines, really quite bulletproof, very advanced Vanos systems in them. Some of them had titanium crankshafts and things. So, you know, really pretty cool stuff.
I managed to get my hands on an S50 B32 from the E36 M3, and that Vanos was made by Rolls-Royce.
Probably the aircraft manufacturer, right? Yes, quite possibly, yeah, because there were very tight tolerances on those things. Yes.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
We have a question popping up. What are the chances that we'll see Wagons again in the US?
Oh my.
It's still old sore, I know, but the teaser of the G80X M3 wagon was it whet a lot of appetites, I think, in the enthusiast community.
Yeah. I gave a talk, a live talk to a club chapter a few years back, and that question came up and it wasn't for M wagons, it was just for wagons in general. And I went, look, we'll bring what you guys buy, but you've got to buy enough of them, and you can't buy them used. You got to buy them new, right? Someone's got to buy it first. And a lot of the wagons that were sold in the market were company cars. I mean, I've had many wagons in my years as a company employee, and for a lot of years that was all you could get because the X5s were so popular and X3s were so popular, we couldn't get them as company cars, so we'd get wagons, and which suited me just fine. And so people would buy them used, and they got them for a good deal too. So, you know, you got to buy them new, and you got to buy them in enough volume. I'll tell you that the rarest car we've sold in the US was a 540 wagon. That's the rarest car we've ever sold. And it just doesn't make a decent business case. It's just hard to justify. 5 Series wagon, the sales started dropping and dropping. They had been steady for many years, and then X5 started to really take off, and 5 Series started to die off, and it kept dying, and eventually it just became not worth it anymore. So there's no desire to invest the money to homologate and develop the next generation for the US market. Right now we're at 60% SAVs, if you can believe it. And the car sales are, you know, they want cars. So it's very difficult to make a good business case for wagons. I know some manufacturers try. There's always one that tries. You know, Cadillac tried it. Chrysler tried it with the 300 for a while. It was a good looking wagon. The Cadillac wagon was good looking. We've had some good looking wagons. I think the M3 G81, I guess it would be, wagon looks fantastic. Mm-hmm. But is there enough volume there to make it worthwhile? And I have to say, seeing it from the inside, I couldn't justify it.
It's money talks, and I'll leave the second part of the saying.
Yeah, unfortunately, you know, it needs, yeah, you need volume. You need a certain volume to make it work.
So talking about markets and volume and that sort of thing, what effect is the Chinese market having on BMW's design and product line decisions at this point? It's become, the Chinese market is now the largest single market in the world.
Correct.
For cars as a whole.
Yes.
I'm not sure if it's BMW's largest single market.
It is our largest single market too.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's replaced the US in that regard.
Absolutely, it has. Yeah.
And BMW has the manufacturing partnership with Brilliance, I think it is.
Yes, we've had that partnership for many years. Well, in order to operate in China, you have to have a partnership. So
JV, yeah.
Yeah. It influences more on the larger cars. So certainly 7s and possibly 8 Series, and you know, the large expensive cars, it makes more of a difference. China is a huge market for 7 Series. If you can understand that.
It's a chauffeur market.
It is a chauffeur market, yeah. Their requirements for something like an X7 is very different than our requirements for an X7. They use an X7 as a chauffeur-driven vehicle. We use an X7 to take the kids to soccer, right? Mm-hmm. And fill it up with 5 kids and take them to soccer games and things. Whereas in China, it would be probably a driver with 1 passenger in the rear. So their requirements for the vehicles are quite different than ours. But we're flexible enough to be able to tailor the vehicles for each of the markets. So we'll have different options in our market than they would have. They have a long wheelbase 3 Series and 5 Series that are specifically for the China market, because they do chauffeur-driven vehicles, which it wouldn't fly here. It just wouldn't work here. So we have that flexibility. We're able to develop a car or to tailor a car for specific markets.
Although I think, in a little bit of trivia, and you can correct me if I'm wrong or misguided, the F30, the hybrid version, actually used the Chinese long wheelbase platform for the, or a version of it for the, to accommodate the battery pack.
That one I don't remember, but our version is the same wheelbase as it always was, so it didn't change that.
It had a little chrome flash at the back on the C-pillar, which was the sort of distinguishing mark. But I'm geeking out at this point. I used to travel frequently to China for my business, so I spent a lot of time there, and I'm familiar with the long wheelbase models. And when I saw that in the US, it was, I recognize. Anyway, so on a personal note, we're getting close to winding up now. But on a personal note, tell us about your favorite M cars, please.
Oh, my favorite. Well, I bought an E92 M3, so that kind of tells you something. I liked all of them, and I've been lucky enough to be with the company for 32 years now. So I've seen everything from I was there for the end of the E30 M3 all the way to the current one. So I like them all. I chose the E92 M3 because it's mine's a manual with the carbon top, and it's a naturally aspirated V8. So you know, if you're going to keep a car into the future, that's probably one of the ones that's it's going to be a high watermark down the road. I love the G80. is fantastic. And those carbon shell seats are amazing. If you fit in them, they're amazing. If you don't fit in them, they're going to be hell. But luckily I fit. Fortunately I fit. And if you track your car, they are amazing and a hell of a deal too. So yeah, I do love the M2 CS. It is really a fantastic car. And then, yeah, I mean, every one of them, it depends what you want to do with it. You know, if I'd be going to a track day, I'd probably choose an M2 CS or a G8X, not a convertible, but probably a Cooper sedan. If I'm going cross country, I'd choose an M8 comp. You know, and if I have to go to Home Depot and pick up some stuff too, then it's an X5N. So you know, you have to choose what works for you in your situation, in your life situation. But I love them all.
Okay, I think we're right about the 1 hour mark from when we started. Tom, do you have any final words you'd like to share with us as we wind things up?
Well, again, I just hope the chapter grows. I love seeing the photos on Facebook of all the members' cars. I think it's fantastic. Keep them coming, and hope to see some of you or all of you at an event sometime soon as we come out of COVID. I know we'll be going to O-Fest this year, and we'll be in Monterey for Legends of the Autobahn. We'll also be at the Rolex reunion. We'll bring the M4 GT3 out. That'll be the US premiere of the new top-level customer race car. We'll have the all-wheel drive versions of the M3, M4 there. What else? And we'll also have iX and i4 at Legends of the Autobahn in Monterey, as well as O-Fest later on in the season. So lots of good stuff coming, and we'll be happy to share it with all the members.
Tom, thank you very much. Really appreciate your time this evening and sharing some of the insights from the inside. I'd just like to say a couple of words as far as the M chapter is concerned. Thank you, those of you who are attending and have joined us tonight. Really appreciate it. If you are an M chapter member, thank you very much for joining the chapter. If you're not a member, please consider joining, whether it's as an addition to your current local chapter membership or as your primary chapter. That's also an option if you prefer. We have some upcoming events. Please check our Facebook page and also our web page. One particular event I would like to highlight that Tom didn't mention is that there's an event called Impact that takes place at Pocono Raceway in Pennsylvania. That is the 7th of August, and the M chapter will be there representing the BMW CCA. We hope to have 1 or 2 nice cars, and it'll be a great opportunity for you to come out and experience some of the, how can I put it, some of the activities that are typically enjoyed by the younger end of the BMW M owner profile. So there's some neat stuff happening and an opportunity to come out and see some cool cars, not just from within the CCA, but also a wider BMW audience. It's a terrific event, so look out for us there. Aside from that, please stay in touch. As I mentioned, the Facebook page, that's how we primarily communicate, but we're working to broaden that, and we have a newsletter that will be coming out any minute now, probably. So that's about it. Once again, thank you very much. Tom, thank you again very much. We really appreciate it. I really enjoy your monthly column as well in the Rondell and the insights from the mothership, and look forward to continuing to read them and to staying in touch.
Thank you.
Thanks. Have a good night.
Thanks. Good night.
Good night, everybody.